Okay, Patrick, if you want to kick it off.
Yep, I'll get the screen shared here. Oh, is this just that single slide we're seeing right now, correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so in the beginning here, we got our pictures as you're seeing, different predators to be calling, bobcat, coyote, mountain lion, things along those lines. Essentially, we're getting into why do people predator hunt. It's challenging. It's great for population control. At times when there's high densities, it's great for calling because most of the time they're hungry. They're looking for something to come into. We talk about depredation. As you see in these photos here, we have a calf and a sheep that have been killed by coyotes. And at times for our positions, we're utilizing calling and thermal in there and removing those animals from the property if possible. Other reasons when the prices are proper, you got a good fur value. I know back in 2019, guys were getting $50 to $60 on coyote carcasses. You can do it pretty much year round in regards to your hunting seasons are no longer being open. And then just overall, just the aesthetics of being outside and being in the outdoors.
Okay, so one thing that can take the fun out of calling really fast is if you're not comfortable. So the first thing we're going to talk about is footwear and clothing. Footwear, you want some comfortable boots, and it's usually cold when you're going to be calling for fur. So you want to have really good um, boots that keep your feet warm. Lower and upper body clothing, face mask is important not only for warmth but for camouflage to break up the color of your face. Really warm gloves are good, and then I always take hand warmers too, just in case you need those. So, like I said, nothing takes the fun out of doing it in the winter if you're cold. He won't last very long.
In regards to equipment, you're talking about all sorts of different options here. We're starting off with like rifles and shotguns. Camo for those pieces are optional. If you'd like to have it, you definitely can. It's been done before without it. You have a whole variety of rifle calibers, and you have your shotguns if you're up close and personal. In regards to optics, you're looking at your daylight scopes, thermal scopes, handhelds of the sort, same thing for thermal, binoculars, spotting scopes. It really depends on if you're going during the daytime, the nighttime, stuff like that. Your options for your calls. We have hand calls, open read, closed read, which we'll get into later here. Electronic calls, which is a pretty good standard. Uh, Diaphragm calls and hand squeakers. You have a whole mess of options depending on your price range. If you're just getting into it and want to try it out, hand calls are great. If you're willing to spend a little bit extra money, you have your options for electronic callers. Decoys, again, a lot of options there. A lot of different ways to do it. They're great, especially for daylight calling. At times, it keeps that animal's focus on there. Seat cushions, usually during the daylight, you're going to be sitting down. They're great. I know there's been plenty of times I've sat on the ice, and it's not the best of times, but it is what it is. Scent killer or scent confusion products. Now, you can definitely utilize these products if need be. A really good factor just in general to play is the wind. Again, we'll get into that later bit in the PowerPoint here. Handheld radios, some people utilize those. They'll set up as a group and kind of talk with each other for communication as quiet as possible. Range finders, those are great when you're saying, okay, if I sit down here, that rock's about 200 yards out. If I get it to that range, it's within 200 yards. A GPS, that's an option. It kind of ties back into the very bottom there on Onyx Hunt application, utilizing those aerial maps to see, okay, well, I think these coyotes are going to come from this location or who owns this ground, stuff along those lines. Same thing to those county land directory maps and satellite imagery photos, your plat maps, your traditional style stuff, physical books, and then, of course, backpack, bags, things like that to help carry all your equipment in.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about when to call. Obviously, you can call predators any time of the year, but in the fall, the population is at its highest point because of the pups were born the previous spring. So you're never going to have a higher population than you do in the fall. You have more animals to call, so it usually can be a little easier. The young of the year aren't as educated or as smart as the older ones. So the fall is a great time of year, great time to call. The winter is also very good because when it starts to get colder, they get hungrier. They need calories for heat and to survive. So they come to like the food type calls really well. And then we'll get into those types of calls later. But time of day, obviously, nighttime is probably the best, and that's because the predators are up and moving and they're active, and that's when they're hunting to feed. So that is going to be your best time. The second best time, in my opinion, is right before dusk, because the animals are just waking up and getting ready to go out. They're hungry from sleeping all day. That would be my second favorite time. The third favorite would be early in the morning. If coyotes or fox have not got their belly full and they want to get something to eat before they go into the rest mode, they will come really good in the morning if they're still hungry. Midday is probably the least productive of times to call because that's when they're resting and sleeping. Not that they can't be called, but it's not nearly as you won't be nearly as successful.
Some locations to call listed as a lot of our public ground, like our game production areas, waterfowl production areas, crep walk-ins, things along those lines. And then you're talking about different ways to get into those locations or what you're looking for at those locations for success. You're looking for tracks, you're looking for scat. You're talking to landowners in the area. Hey, have you seen or heard coyotes? You're looking for abundance of prey species. If you're seeing a lot of rabbits, a lot of turkeys, things along those lines, you're going to have some success because they're going to be hunting in those areas. And then at times just looking around livestock. They're going to be coming into those cattle yards, those sheep yards. They're going to be coming around. So those are some locations you could be looking to call. For your setup, these are just more of your basics in this sense. You're essentially there's all sorts of different ways to do this. Just to clarify, there's going to be a lot of different opinions, a lot of different ways to do it. But your general basics is when you're coming in with your vehicle, be as quiet as possible. Try to conceal yourself. Uh, you're going to be parking in a location where they may not be crossing downwind of it, or they might not be coming and seeing that vehicle. You're trying to make that as discreet as possible. You're going to have your gear ready to go when you're getting parked. So once you're parked, you got your stuff ready. You're walking out. You're setting up. You're going to try to keep that noise to a minimum. We're not going to be talking on our phone, tromping around, things along those lines. Just keeping that noise to a minimum. Always keep the wind as your most important factor. It's always great to have a wind in your face or a crosswind. Those animals typically have a tendency to go downwind of what's being heard, seen, stuff like that. You're going to keep the sun at your back as when possible. You're essentially kind of keeping the sun in their eyes because you don't want to be skylined, you don't want to be up top walking in. You're not going to walk straight down the middle of wherever you're going to be calling. You're going to probably try to set up along the edging, assuming those animals are going to come from upwind to you downwind if possible. In regards to your caller distance when you're setting up, it varies. It really depends on location. You might have like a lot of open ground here in South Dakota, or you might have some tighter stuff the further you go west, and it varies, but up to 100 yards max. Usually I'm setting up within 50 to 75, if anything, for when I set my caller out. Continuing with our setup, we're talking about our part. If you have a partner with you, you have someone upwind, you have someone downwind, and they are essentially your second set of eyes. So you're going to say, okay, I'm going to cover from this area on. I'll be looking for that. You're going to be downwind, checking from there. In terms of safety, always know where your partner is and what's behind what you're shooting at when you go in. You can say, okay, well, half mile away there's a homestead, or quarter mile away there's cattle. So you want to be respectful to the land and those animals in that area, because last thing you want is to be shooting someone's house, shooting someone's dog, cattle, stuff like that, because it definitely won't get invited back from there. You're going to be utilizing the topography in that area, brush, rocks, trees, fence lines, things like that. If you're doing daylight calling, you're going to set up somewhere where you can have it against your back, kind of break up your outline. Again, we're trying not to skyline ourselves to where we're so blatantly obviously out there. That'll get the attention of those animals. Again, having everything ready before you call, you're going to make sure you have your firearms ready. You're going to make sure you're set up in a good position to where you're not going to be having a lot of movement and where they're going to notice you coming in if you have to swing around, stuff like that. Your call duration is going to be a minimum of 15 minutes. You're going to go periodically. There's different ways to do your sequencing. If you're going to call nonstop or if you're going to call, break it up for a period of silence, it's really up to you, but a minimum of 15 minutes. I've had coyotes come in about 40, 45 minutes at times, but that's more for work than it is for fur. It just takes a little bit more time, and I'm doing a lot more warmer season stuff, spring and summer. After you fire your shot, keep calling. We're not going to jump up, hoot and holler and high five at that time. You're going to take the animal if you can get one. You're going to keep calling because there's a possibility if there's two or three or whatever coming in, you might be able to get that second or third one stopped and get another round fired off after that. Or you can simply switch up sounds and see if you can get them to come back in or stop a distance out and take that shot from there. When your stand is done, you quietly go back to your vehicle. That's more in the sense of if you plan on calling some more in that area. Like let's say we go another quarter mile, half mile away. There's a very good possibility you might have other animals in that area from there. But if you're going to be calling around, you never know. Sometimes you might call right in front of you. Those coyotes come in from right there at that piece. But however much farther down the road, there might be some right there too. So try to do your best you can and optimize the piece of ground you have. So what we're doing from here on, we'll present some scenarios for locations here. As you can see on the screen, we have two red arrows. And so in this scenario, we're calling Bobcat. And that's a different style of calling compared to coyotes. Coyotes will come in fast and hard. They'll come breaking through. They'll come right to that caller. Cats have a tendency to sneak and stalk and stop. And there's times where you'll be calling and you might look over and there's one sitting right there and you would have never known, but it's sitting dead still. And so what I've done is continuous calling in those scenarios. I've had cats come in at the 60-minute mark. It was a lot of calling, a lot of sitting, but it was definitely worth it. I did not get my shot off because there was a lot of cover, but we still got one to come in. In this scenario, what we're doing, we're setting up with our red arrows on the top side on a higher point, looking down into this body, this river, this creek, and these trees. Those cats are going to be sticking to cover. It's what they like the most. So when you're calling from these high points down in, you're essentially looking for cats to become creeping out along the edging. So what you're going to be keeping your eye on. And so we wouldn't want to set up down low because what you're doing is you're walking in the area where those animals are supposed to be at. And that might be kicking them out. And then there goes your whole calling opportunity. So this is one bobcat scenario. Another one is very similar in the sense of we're going to be sitting on these high points. We're going to call in between the saddles on our rolling hills here. We're going to assume those animals are going to be coming up those low spots. Typically, your predators are going to be having a path of least resistance. When you're looking at trapping, calling, things along those lines, you can utilize that assumption to your advantage when you're doing the calling and trapping aspect for fur and what things along those lines. Bobcat, again, we're sitting up on the top side of this hill. We're assuming they're going to be coming out of the cover of these trees, and then they're going to be getting on the edging of it, and that's when you can get your shot off from there.
Okay, so now we're going to go into one of my favorites, and that's calling raccoons. And it's very fun, becoming more and more popular. First, we'll talk about some locations to call raccoons. As you see in this picture, this is an ideal spot with the cover of the old abandoned buildings where they live in the walls, up in the attics, under granary floors. And then you have a bunch of mature old cottonwood trees there and with den holes. But I love this picture because it shows just a great location to call raccoons. So the next picture is one of a den tree. You can see the red arrows pointing at a at a hole, and you see these all the time in these old mature trees like this. And then at the bottom left, you see the raccoon poking his head out of the hole, and you could have anywhere from one to, depending on how big the den is, 8 or 9 or 10 raccoons living in a tree if it's big enough. They love living in den trees. Another location, another broken off tree which made a hole, probably got snapped by the wind. I could see raccoons living in that as well too. This is a picture of an old, probably a badger hole, an old badger hole, and they'll use those as well a lot if there's no mature trees or old abandoned buildings. They also like to den in old beaver bank lodges, holes. They'll clean those out and line them with grass and insulate them and live in those. And they'll also live under culverts in roads or drain tile or pipes that go out of dams or anything. Any kind of hole, any kind of protection raccoons will live in. Another perfect picture of an old abandoned building with the holes in the roof and the shingles, and this just speaks raccoons to me because you can really see they would love to live in that. It gives them a lot of warmth. It's all run down, dilapidated. You can have many raccoons that live in these abandoned buildings. So now we'll go into like some of the calling of the raccoons. Raccoon sounds to use would be the raccoon fight, raccoon pup in distress, mad boar raccoon, distress sounds of woodpecker or rabbit. And the way I like to do it is you can start with one of the distress sounds and play it for a few minutes. And if nothing happens, which it usually won't, you can either switch to the raccoon fight, raccoon pup in distress, or the mad boar. And that almost always elicits something. They'll come out of den holes. They'll stick their heads out of broken windows of old abandoned buildings. They'll come out of granaries. They'll come out of barn cupolas, and it's crazy. But when you're calling them and you get their interest and they start to come, it will be very fast. They come on a dead run, usually right for the speaker if you're using an electronic call, so you have to be ready for fast action. And if sitting on the stand for 8 to 10 minutes is about all you need for raccoons, because if they're going to come, they're usually close and they're going to come right away. Stand set up. Just place the collar on the back side of the tree close to where you're calling. Just a few, can be a few feet away or a few yards away. Make sure you sit downwind of it, in the direction where you expect the raccoons to come from. Conceal yourself. Wear camo just like you do when calling predators. I wear full face mask, full gloves, full camo. They're not dumb either. They detect movement, and if they pick you up, they're going to turn around and leave. They're going to be gone. The thing I can't stress enough is I've called once off of a bridge once, and I had 4 coming from one side. I was with a buddy. I was watching one, and I said, I need help. Come over here. I got 4 coming. And he goes, I can't. I have 8 coming on my side. So there were like 12 of them, and it was fast and furious. So it's very fun. It's growing very popular, and it's actually one of my favorite things to do is call raccoons. As far as weapons, you can use 22 long rifle. The advantages of that is cheaper ammunition. 22 Magnum is a much better choice. It's way more powerful than just the long. A lot more knockdown power, better range, longer distance shooting. You can buy 22 Magnums in semi-automatic now, so you can get multiple shots off if you have multiple raccoons coming in. They're a little more expensive than a regular 22. They're more expensive to shoot, but they're a great choice. I have 2 semi-automatic 22 Magnums. And then another option would be the 17 HMR V or WMR, another great option if needed. All of the rim fires will work. It's just really up to you what your preference is. You can either, I put scopes on all of mine too. And if you're scared about mission, then you can always use a shotgun. That works for raccoons too. If you don't want to, care about saving the fur or anything, shotguns work great.
Awesome. So we'll get into some more locations here in regards to calling like coyote and fox. We'll have a couple of different scenarios. In this one, we have a hay or alfalfa field, which is an excellent place to be calling either of these. They're naturally going to be coming to these locations for mousing, especially after a fresh cutting. They're going to be looking around for rodents, things like that. You're going to set up in these fields, these locations, call with the assumption they should be around, and you should have some luck for the most part. Some other locations are rolling hills, low spots, looks like some cattle trails in this picture. For the most part, you can almost assume if there's a natural trail established like that, they might be utilizing that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But at the same time, I've also had them pop up out of nowhere, where you least expect it to. But in this case, we're assuming they're going to be coming from all those trees there in the picture. They might be following those cattle trails along there and coming out into that open ice, hopefully. These arrows here in this picture are essentially just kind of telling you where you could set up at this location. You could also view these arrows in the sense of where could coyotes be coming from or popping up at. Because yeah, they might be coming in that low spot down the middle, which would be great. But at the same time, there's always been some scenarios where you just see a face sitting there looking at you over top a hill with their ears up. So just again, consistently keeping your eyes peeled for these animals. They're wily for a reason. Another scenario here, kind of same setup. We're sitting up on top of a hillside. We're looking at our low spots as usual. If you look to the left-hand side, you can see it looks like there's established deer trail. They may be coming up from there, or they may come up over top the hill along these trees. Again, keeping our eyes peeled and kind of keeping our head on a swivel. In this one, it looks like we got some slough ground, which is great. For the winter time here, it'll hold animals. I know a lot of guys go around messing with sloughs and kicking them out and kind of going after them from there. In this case, we're going to be calling it and assuming that they're brave enough to come out onto the ice and we can maybe get a shot off then, or they might be working that edging and maybe you can get them to stop and take a shot from there. Locations to call. This is an aerial map going along. Looks like you got White River there, and you have a couple different options here. I know guys that when they do their calling, they'll have aerial maps, and then they might have four locations, and they go, okay, if we have a north wind, we're going to set up at these spots tonight. Or if we've got a south wind, these are the spots we're going to be going tonight. That's a really good way to go about doing your calling. Again, with that wind in your face or a crosswind, you go, I'm going to assume these animals are coming from here at this spot, and I need a north or south or whatever wind to make this an effective calling session. And in this case, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're showing two possible locations you could be setting up because you're going to be calling that river from some higher points. They're going to be coming from that low spot out is what we're doing. And depending on the wind direction is where you would set up between those two red arrows. Another location a little bit more closer in on this spot. You have a winding body of water. You've got some trees, and then you've got looks like some rolling hills and maybe even some fields there. A lot of different options on where a person could set up. I'm going to assume those animals are going to be along that body of water and probably in those trees. Again, depending on what way the wind's coming from, we're going to be setting up effectively to where we're going to call them from those trees and then kind of going from there. Hopefully they come right out in the open. You can get that shot off. Locations to call again continued with the assumption we're under coyote and fox. Again, red arrows here at this location. We've got a homestead in the top right-hand corner. It is the belief that there's some cattle at that location. You could be setting up with them going to that homestead or coming back from it. And you can go either way, one of these spots. As you can see, there's some trees and almost looks like some drainage ditch, low spots. We're going to be calling and hopefully pulling them out from there and kind of going off of that. We have a stand scenario. In this slide, we have an X, which is where we are currently set up at as a caller for this scenario. The circle around there is where we're assuming or probably likely knowing there's coyotes sitting. We have a north wind in our face. As you can see, and at the top, we have a north wind on our face, which is great for our stand here. We're going to be calling that set of trees, that spot, with the belief those animals are going to come downwind of where we're calling because we're setting up our caller between us and that animal. Excuse me. And what you're going to be doing is if you're utilizing an electronic caller, how I typically like setting it up is the assumption they're going to go to the caller and or downwind of that caller. So if I can set it up just right, when they come downwind, they're giving me a nice broadside shot or a nice front shot on their chest. And so that's what we're kind of doing here is setting that collar up between us and those set of trees in a way to where those animals, if they go downwind, it's just an excellent shot for us to get off. Continuing with the stand scenario, what you're seeing here is those exact same set of trees from the previous slide. This is more of an on-ground, in-person view. And so what we're doing again is setting up with the assumption they're coming from those trees. And then we're going to have that collar set up so they're going downwind. Continuing the stand scenario, what we're talking about here is, again, looking for sign on sites. You go, okay, well, I know there's tracks around here, there's scat around here. The landowners have seen them. All of those things are coming together to where you go, I'm confident there are coyotes in this area. Where do I need to set up to make this an effective calling stand? And again, if you're talking to private guys that have the ground in that area, most of the time they're either seeing them or hearing them at night while doing chores or farm work. They go, yeah, I hear them every night to the west of my place. I think they're over in these trees or in this slough or wherever. And so that's really good to get to know your landowners and just effectively scouting locations to have success there.
Okay, yeah, very good, Patrick. So calling is a lot like fishing. Some days those predators just won't respond to the calls and they just don't have any interest. Just like some days when you can go ice fishing and mark fish all day long and you tried everything in the tackle box to make them bite and they won't. And I really don't know why. The reason for that. Some say barometric pressures. Depends on the weather. If it's been really mild, they're not hungry. If it's not close to mating season, howls don't work great. Just, nobody really knows, I don't think, why they don't respond. But we're going to talk about two types of calls, mouth calls and electronic calls, and some of the advantages and disadvantages of those. The advantages first of the mouth calls. They're small, they're lightweight, easy to carry in your pocket. They're simple design, not much can go wrong with them. They make a fairly accurate reproduction of animal sounds with practice. There's no battery to go dead or failure of remote, failure of equipment, less equipment failure overall, and they're relatively inexpensive. Anywhere from $5 to $15 can buy you a good mouth call. The pictures on the bottom are really good examples of pictures of mouth calls. The disadvantages are when you're using them, you're using your hand and your body a little bit to blow, that you do have some movement where you can be perfectly still if you're using electronic, except when you're using the remote. Predators can focus on you a little bit easier. Sometimes when it's really cold, the moisture in them from blowing in them can freeze up. And they're also easy to lose if they're kind of camel colored. That's just some of the few of the little disadvantages of those mouth calls. Now, the advantages of the electronic call and disadvantages are today there's just so many models out. More companies keep making better products that produce really realistic sounds. I mean, if you go back and listen to those from a distance, you just can't tell the difference, that it isn't something live. So in that respect, they're amazing. And like I said, all kinds of companies are making them now. Um, Sounds are just crazy good, and there's no practice to master them like you would to master those sounds like you would on an electronic call. The disadvantages, of course, is they're more expensive. You know, they can be a few $100s. Um, you can be calling in, and here comes a pair, and all of a sudden, for some unknown reason, the batteries just die on you. That's very frustrating. And then if you don't have a mouth call or any a bulb squeaker, or you're pretty much sunk unless maybe start kissing the back of your hand if they're close enough and pretend like you're a mouse. But you, yeah, I mean, and that happens. People or the remote batteries fail and you're trying to switch sounds or turn it off and it's too loud and they're coming in and all of a sudden it's way too loud. You go, I got to turn it down. And then you can't because your remote has failed. So it can happen. Another disadvantage is it's just a lot more stuff to carry. Um, I know that's the thing I didn't like. It was just so much stuff to carry, but they are really good and the sounds are amazing that they make.
All right, so we're gonna get more into like your inexpensive calls here. We talk about open reed, closed reed, diaphragm, and squeaker bulb. Uh, so your advantages, disadvantages of your open reed. It is less prone to freeze up with your closed reed calls as you're blowing into it, especially cold weather. That moisture builds up and starts to form ice on the inside, and that either mutes the entire thing or just throws off the sound entirely. The sounds are more realistic because with those open reed calls, it takes more skill to do it, but you are able to take your breath and the way you move your diaphragm and other stuff in that sense and make those sounds quiver, make those sounds more realistic. While with a closed reed call, it is pretty much just one sound and you're just blowing as hard as you can. And then you're oscillating your hands like a open reed call right here. You're oscillating with your fingers, almost simulating the mouth of an animal crying out in that sense. And then again, more practice is needed for those open reed calls, but they are very nice and they're very versatile. In regards to your closed reed calls, it was kind of already mentioned prior, was they're really easy to blow. You pretty much buy it, you blow into it, and if you do it just right, it'll sound like a rabbit. It'll sound like whatever it's supposed to be mimicking in that sense. It takes less amount of time to practice it to master it because again, you're pretty much just blowing into it. And if you're getting those oscillations in those hands right, it sounds pretty good. And then again, but it is more prone to spit freezing up in the chamber of that caller. And then you don't really have an effective call for that sense. When it comes to calling sounds, you are essentially looking at prey distress, and this is across the board for predators. And then for specifics, if you're looking at coyotes, coyote vocalizations. In prey distress, you're relying on the hunger of that animal, the curiosity of that animal, especially now when it's really cold out. You might be utilizing those rabbit distress, um, sometimes fawn distress, or birds, anything really, something to pique that animal's interest and hunger. And then in regards to vocalizations, we're also getting into that breeding season of coyotes here. Sometimes you're going to be utilizing vocalizations, saying, "Hey, who's out there? What's going on?" And sometimes they come in looking, "Okay, well, there's another guy in my territory. I don't want him around," or "Hey, there's a gal around. I might want to go check her out," stuff like that. So when we talk about, again, those different types of sounds broken down, when you're looking at prey distress, you're looking at cottontail jackrabbit, woodpecker, rodent squeaks like rat or mouse, or like fawn bleats. So these are all a lot of your standard go-tos for prey distress. And when it comes to sounds, it's also to some extent variable on your what you have for prey in that area. And even then, sometimes you might throw a wrench in the mix and say, okay, well, I'm gonna use a prey distress sound of an animal that's not uh, established here in South Dakota. I might try that out. Maybe that'll work. You never know. But prey distress is a good starter pack to kind of go with for there. When we get into coyote vocalizations, those are a little bit, not to say difficult, but there is various types of vocalizations for coyotes. And so you're talking about your lone howls, interrogation howls, things along those lines. Pretty much saying hello, is anyone out there? That's like your locator stuff. That's what you're gonna do. You're gonna howl out, and usually you get responses back. Now, not all the time are you gonna have coyotes coming into that call, but you at least can do some locating and say, okay, well, two of them just responded about a mile away to the northeast of me. Maybe I'm gonna switch my stand up. I'm gonna go closer, gonna get in their bubble, push them from there. Challenge howls, you're kind of looking at a mix of things. Your challenge howls, and like on the very bottom of our screen are warning howls, warning barks. I don't mess with those too terribly much, to be all honest, unless I get busted. If I come in and by some chance a coyote comes in there and I get busted because they went downwind and they smelled me, which happens more in the springtime during denning season, for me at least, is they're going to sit somewhere, they're going to sit there and just bark and bark and bark and howl. Very short, very sharp. And that's essentially just saying, hey, something's wrong, something's here. Don't go in there. And then your whole stand's pretty much gone at that point, and that's when I usually have a tendency to break out challenge, howls, warning barks, almost to make them mad, like I'm mocking them, or like in the sense of maybe it is another coyote and they're seeing something too, so I'm going to go check out what's going on. And at times, if you can see it in your scope, you can see them ringing their tail. They'll come in real angry, ringing that tail, going, "Who's here?" Their hairs are up and everything. It takes a little bit to do, but it does work occasionally. The lone howls are more optimal to me. In regards to your adult distress, I don't have a tendency to use your standard kai sounds like that. It does work. I think your best bet is typically with pup distress, as a lot of people know already. You're utilizing that to just say, okay, well, one of the kids is hurt. I got to go check on them. Or, hey, what the heck's going on over there? I'm going to go see what's going on with that. And so these are some examples of vocalizations to use. There's a whole mess of them out there. I think a lot of it comes back to just trying them yourself on site and seeing what works for you.
Yeah, it's some great information, Patrick. We're going to just briefly touch on shooting because this is a whole nother topic, whether to get into calibers or not. Everybody has their opinion on all those, what type of gun to use. But basically, there's just three different kinds. There's the semi-auto, like your ARs, and they're great because they offer multiple shots at running coyotes if you miss, or multiple coyotes that are coming into the stand. That's one of the biggest advantages to using the semi-auto. You don't have to cock that bolt. The next one is a bolt action gun. Disadvantage, you got it one shot at a time, but usually a little more accurate than semi-autos, and you can shoot longer range shots more accurately, I think. And then if you're calling in really close cover, like dense forests or any place where you can't see more than 30 to 50 yards, a shotgun would be a good choice. 12 gauge or 10 gauge. So, and then you have the proper caliber selection you have to think about as well too. So this is a little bit about tactics. Shooting rests and shooting aids. Love using the tripods that are out there now with the ball swivels on the top. You can just get so steady with those. Standing, if you have something to break up your outline in the background, everybody's using them now. You see it on the calling videos and stuff. If you like to lay prone, the picture there shows a Harris bipod. And back in the old days, that's all we had. We didn't have the tripod death grip. We didn't have any of that. We just had the Harris bipod. So I always called laying down, which there's nothing wrong with it, except it kills your lower back after a while. It gets really sore. If you do a lot of stands in a day, it hurts. But the invention of that big tripod that's made out of carbon that makes it light is just really a really great thing. Windage, you have to worry about range, bullet drop, what optics you want to use, maneuverability. That's again we talked about. The tripod, I can maneuver easy on that, and then suppressors also are really something fairly new that can really help as well, because on certain types of guns, it really does cut down on the volume, and you can get away with a lot. You can get away with more shots, and hopefully get that second coyote. You have anything to add on that, Patrick?
No, not really. I mean, a lot of good stuff there in regard to your general tactics. That was good.
Okay, this next slide, we put in just to kind of, when I saw it, I go, I probably wouldn't be calling from right there. What's wrong with this picture? The pros and the cons. It's a great spot. I mean, it just screams predators, coyotes, and fox. It's a nice little valley, some scattered cedars. It's just a beautiful spot. But where I see where that guy's laying, I probably wouldn't have picked that spot, because unless the coyote stops down there on the open, you don't have a very big window there to shoot. He's got to be right there. He's either going to take that low area to the right of him, or somewhere off to his left and maybe come up, or he's just going to pop up right in front of that guy, and you're not going to have enough time to move that weapon before he sees you to get it. So if I were him, I would have followed that game trail and got out to that point so you could see the whole bottom, and then they can't pop up on you. So being able to see in every direction clearly is really important when you're calling in wide open country like that. Um, that's just my opinion anyway. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
No, that was really good points there, Darren. Overall, like you said, excellent location. The guy's got his camo on, he's got his face cover, he's laying prone
Right.
with a bipod. He's got everything set up. I agree with you. The only thing I would have done differently too was gone further to that point, maybe either laid down or sat with my back to the tree, and you got a
Mm-hmm.
bigger window to be seeing coyotes coming in and shooting and going from there. So.
Exactly.
Bullets for coyotes. Again, just in general, bullets in general for your predators. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone likes what they like. We can touch briefly on it in terms of bullet construction, things like that. You have your VMAXs, AMAXs. Those are more of your ballistic tips, those frangible bullets that, and we might talk a little bit here in the next part on some of that, but you talk about your bullet construction, the velocity versus your bullet weight, and how fast that bullet's coming out of the firearm, and the weight itself. Is it going to be heavy enough to be penetrating, or is it going to be opening up right on the outside of the body cavity? But you want to know where those bullets are shooting when you're at the range. You say, okay, well, at 100 yards, it might be an inch high, which is just fine because at 200 yards on my bullet box, it says it should be zeroed at 200, and things along those lines. In regards to scope reticle choices and scope turrets, it's great. I have a daylight rifle of my own. I have a BDC reticle, which there's hash marks underneath and on the sides. So my windage is on my sides and my bullet drop is underneath. So I know at 300 yards with a 22-250, I'm putting my secondary hash mark just right on the top part, and it'll hit dead center on that coyote's vitals. I like those types of scopes for daylight rifles. They're just great. Your scope turrets, that's in regards to your windage and elevation. There are some guys that have some higher end scopes than what I have for myself. And then with that, you're able to utilize some guys will tape like a little piece of paper on the side of their stock and they go, okay, well, at 300 yards, I need to have it clicked over to this for my elevation. And okay, there's a crosswind at 10 miles an hour. I'm going to change my windage a little bit, touch to, and that just dead on with those turrets. Your magnification versus field of view in varying terrains. So that's a really good point. We could touch on it for daytime scopes, but that's a really good point to be considering when utilizing thermal scopes as well. But overall, your base magnification is, again, your own opinion on what you want there. Some guys will go, I'm going to do nothing but long range shooting, so I'm going to have a higher base magnification. So that the image is right there in my face. Other guys like I want a wider field of view, so I'm gonna have a lower base magnification that allows me to see further in my scope in that sense. But that's your ballistics on that sense, kind of what you're looking for when you're doing a setup there. We talk about bullet construction. I mentioned that already. Frangible bullets versus a big game type bullet. Again, I think in regards to when we talk about bullets, calibers, anything like that, I think a dead coyote's a dead coyote. So if you're just getting into this and you go, well, I've got Dad's old 25-06 for deer, and I've got this old hand call, I think you're just fine because then you got a dead coyote and you got him called in. That's excellent and that's great. If you're looking to do this for fur quality, like I want to preserve these pelts and sell them or do something with them, I think you can't go wrong with like those 22 caliber bullets, like a 2250, a more traditional style. 223 is a versatile, readily available bullet. And then you got some of that new stuff. You got like 6.5 Creedmoors and 6 millimeters and all that stuff. Again, personal opinion on what you like to utilize. Everyone's different. As long as you're taking the animal, that's what matters the most.
You also, if you was going to use a shotgun for close in calling, there is some pretty good shells made for that. Most popular sizes are number 4 buck T, BB, or BBB. And the shot can be made of lead, copper, or nickel plated, or even tungsten. Probably the best one that I found is that load called Dead Coyote. It's really powerful and heavy, and it can, with a full choke, it can probably take a coyote 40 yards. Wouldn't you say, Patrick? 50 maybe at the
Yeah,
most.
I've watched some
Mhm.
videos of guys with like a really nice tight choke and they've taken them at 60 to 70 and that pattern's about right here like a baseball and it just
It's
knocks them
crazy.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not many people use shotguns for them because we're so open in South Dakota. But if you're calling in the like New York in the Adirondacks or something, or where there's a lot of trees, those coyotes just show up right in front of you, and that's all. That'd be the best gun for that because you wouldn't have time to get a rifle on it.
Yep.
So there's
Yep.
practicality for shotguns, but not so much around here.
Yep.
I'll have you talk about this one, Patrick.
Okay. Scope options. We talked a little bit there when we were getting in that ballistics aspect. You're talking about your turrets again. That's your tops and sides in regards to your parallax settings, which is like the clarity of your picture on your daylight scopes, and then you got your turrets, which is what you're utilizing to adjust your windage elevation settings depending on where you're at and what you're doing with it. Again, there's so many different options out there. This one is like almost like a mil spec reticle we're utilizing. And in this sense, you got your windage on your sides for if, okay, it's like a 5-10 mile an hour crosswind, whatever. And then you got your lower stuff there. Okay, well, at 200 yards, this is where I need to sit. So I don't want to say new, but over time they've gradually progressed in regards to quality, and your laws, things like that. So what we have pictured here is a couple different scenarios, different options. You have handhelds, which are essentially your scanners. You're going to be utilizing those. I love having a handheld for when I'm doing thermal because I can just set up with my tripod, like you see in the top right picture, those two dead coyotes. I can set my rifle up on a tripod. I can utilize my calling sequencing, and as I'm doing that, I'm just going to be looking around with my handheld, usually a binocular. Some guys like binoculars. You're scanning, you okay, well, I've got two coming in from the northwest. And then I'm usually pocketing and then I'm getting on my gun and kind of going from there with that. But handhelds are great if you can afford them. Otherwise, if a guy absolutely said, "Well, I only have this much money and all I can afford is a scope," that's just fine too. That those tripods nowadays with those ball heads, it's going to be some more movement, but if you're doing it at night, I think you're sitting pretty decent in regards to getting picked up on. You're going to be sitting with that and you're just going to be rotating on that tripod and scanning as you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. What you see pictured here on the left-hand side, sometimes for work, Darren and I will be setting up to be doing work with beavers. We get guys calling about beavers plugging culverts, things like that. And that setup here, what you see is a rifle on a tripod and then a handheld there on another tripod. That's just set up because sometimes they're not coming in right away. But in the center picture, you can see at times they're very effective during certain times of the year where a guy can take up to 8 to 11 beavers, depending on how many are there, and we might be done with that entire request for service, and that's just fine by us. But overall, thermal optics are an excellent source, an excellent tool for utilizing. We don't have to get too in depth on the pixels and the processing speed or any of that right now, but they're just a great tool to have if you're able to have them.
Just gonna touch a little bit on ballistic phone apps. These have been out for quite a while. Uh, know some people that use them a lot and really like them. Others think they're too complicated, but there's three main ones like the Hornady 4DOF calculator, the Ballistics Arc, and Ballistics AE. And they're pretty self-explanatory. You just have to download the app and get them on your phone and learn how to use them. But they can be very helpful as far as what caliber you have and what bullet you're using. And a lot of guys used to use them a lot. I don't know so much anymore. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I've seen a mixed bag. Some guys go to the range and just shoot, and they go, okay, well, this is where I need to hold. This is what I'm doing. Other
Mhm.
guys go, I gotta go, or they reload their own stuff and they input all that information and they utilize it then too. It's a good source
Yeah,
for calibrating and things along those lines.
right. They can be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so the premise here is that we're utilizing this to call in some fur if we're looking to sell or have some wall hangers, whatever you want to say. In terms of fur primeness and quality, it varies by location and the time of year and the weather and genetics. All of that stuff comes in as a factor. Generally, you get some heavier hides the further you go north and to the west. In South Dakota, we got a mixed bag. To the West River, you got a lot of nice, really heavy prime coyotes. East River, sometimes you get a little more brown. They still have some good color, good quality, but not as heavy as those Western coyotes, West River. In regards to your color quality and things along those lines, those nice pale coyotes are some of your more top dollar coyotes. They got that white, that silver in there, as you can see on the picture. When it talks about the backs being elevated, on that far left picture, that's a nice pale prime coyote. When you go further to the right, you get into like these brown to reddish colored coyotes. Now, don't get me wrong, I've killed a couple red coyotes in my day. They are very neat. But when you look at the fur market, they're not of any value really of anything. Unfortunately, it's usually those nice pale coyotes. They talk about the bellies too. We talk about mange, uh, things like that. You might look if you take a coyote, nice fur white belly, that's great. Sometimes you might have some pink in the crotch. You'll get docked on that. It just depends on who your fur buyer is and how nice they're willing to be. In regards to fur development, like we were talking about, early to late, left to right. And so, like, you're typically from what we know or what I've heard is coyotes like November 1st on are usually pretty good. I know they're better off in December into January. About middle of January, tail end of January on into February, they start rubbing. They might get neck lice, they might get other things, and then that those hides are getting weak. And when we get snow, when we get ice, the flanks get weak as well because when those animals lay down or sit, that hair from the heat of their body freezes down, and when they stand up, it's pulling hairs out. So if you're selling fur, you might have the fur buyer say the flanks are weak and it's got necker, whatever. But that's kind of examples of what they're looking for primeness and fur density. In regards to license requirements, you can kind of look at the slide here on what is required for these species of animal. Your coyote, like a predator or varmint license, which typically, I believe if you purchase a license, you usually get that kind of for free. And most of the stuff's year round, aside from your bobcat and things like that. And then your mountain lion, big game species laws are applicable to those. They're treated as a big game species, so all big game species laws are applicable to them. And then they're at the end of the slideshow, and now we've got time for questions and comments. I know we have some stuff in the chat, but I am not able to see that right now. Sandy, do you want me just to stop sharing and we can pull that up, or what would you like done?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. Well, we have had a fantastic amount of questions and stuff that have been going through the chat. We do have wildlife conservation officers Hill and Taylor on the line as well, and they have been answering questions in the chat. But I believe WCO Hill wanted to do a little law talk as well. So if you want to jump on, I don't know if you want to show your face or not. Hill,
Yeah, I can.
there we go.
Some kids may run into the screen, but we'll be fine.
Need you to talk a little. There you are.
Got me? All right. You hear me good enough?
If you could go
All
a
right.
little bit louder, that would be better.
All right. Jared Hill here, conservation officer out of Sioux Falls. So I answered quite a few questions there in the chat. If anything that I need to clarify more, I guess to start, that some people are asking, I think we got most of them knocked out.
Yeah, Jared, maybe if you just want to kind of go over them just to say it for everybody to hear.
Yeah. So a lot of them were involving the spotlight or the night vision thermal and the spotlighting. And with those, basically, we ended up talking about, so public lands, spotlight thermal opens January 1. So on public lands, it's not open like in November, December. So January 1 on public lands, and public lands includes walk-in and crep areas. But on those, the caveat is you need permission on those because that's leased private land that we don't specifically own. So you can hunt those, but you need permission. But for any state-owned game production areas, like waterfowl production areas, federal lands, I guess out west, like the BLM. So public lands that are owned by any state or federal are open, and the walk-in crap you just need permission from the landowner. Not written permission. First year we had written, but now it's just permission like anything else. So yeah, we talked about, that was the big one, the public lands. And then I guess the other questions were kind of about which can you do. So yeah, you can do thermal, night vision, IR light on night vision on public, but you cannot do on public like spotlighting. So we talked a little bit about artificial light. So artificial light would be any like visible light, spotlights, handheld lights, any visible laser, stuff like that would be on private land. You'd be good to go year round, but on public land you would need, it's got to be thermal or night vision and January 1st. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So we talked about that.
No.
I think, Taylor, that you were answering there that we missed. I can make you unmute here. Oh, someone asked about public lands on the reservations. So our reservations here are pretty checkerboarded. So if there is state land, state walk-in area, crap, or federal lands like BLM within the boundaries, but tribal public lands or any tribal land, they have their own set of laws. That's individual between the different tribes and different reservations. So, but there are some public lands mixed in some of those boundaries that would be open, but anything tribal specifically they have their own game and fish and their own set of laws for those. So I just saw that one pop up. Let's see. And then some bobcat questions. So bobcat is not legal at night. So when you look at the artificial light, that and the thermal night vision laws, it is not, it lists all the animals it's legal for, which is, coyote, fox, badger, skunk, you name it, but not bobcats. So bobcats would not be legal at night with like a thermal night vision, something like that. So, let's see, what else did we cover? So yeah, so then for bobcats, you just need a fur bearer license. You can hunt or trap them, same season dates. You just have to have that fur bearer license, whether or not you trap or shoot or however you take them. And then for bobcat, it's 1 East River, 1 Black Hills, and then West River outside of the Black Hills. The Black Hills management area is just unlimited. So if you're out in like Gregory County, there's no limit on bobcats. That makes sense. See, we had some good questions. Actually, a lot of questions. It was nice to see. See if we missed anything that I answered to the whole group. And then I guess the calibers changed this last year. It used to be 224 and below. So basically, any of the AR stuff was good. Somebody wanted to use a blackout or 300 blackout, so now it's 312 or below. So basically, in theory, if you want to use your 300 Ultra Mag, I mean, legally you can. Safety wise, I mean, depending on where you're at in my area, might not be great, but basically, right now it'd be a 30 caliber and down would be legal for thermal, night vision, stuff like that. So that's kind of the gist of it. Coyotes is pretty easy, to be honest, compared to some of the other stuff. It's pretty open. I mean, all you need is either the $5, the Predator Varmint, the basic license if you don't hunt anything else, or it comes with any of the small game combination. It's all included. Even if you buy a big game like a deer tag and that's all you buy, it's also included for comes with the free Predator Varmint. So any of those options, and you can hunt coyotes. If you hunt anything else with a small game or whatever, you're good to go. If you hunt nothing else, you can just buy they're really cheap, just a little Predator Varmint one, which is, can't remember what it's changed to, but with your habitat stamp, you'd still be 15. But anyway, so all those licenses, that's all you need for coyote. The other varmints and stuff, like the skunks, all that is all included under that. So the only thing you need so bobcats, you need to buy the fur bearer, or if you trap any other critters like coyotes, if you're actually trapping, you need the fur bearer. Otherwise, just the basic hunting license will get you through. Let's see, more questions pop up. Let's see. I think we're good. If I think, keep putting them in the chat there. I can let the trappers. You got a bit more left?
You got 2 more questions there.
2 more questions.
One person's asking about utilizing a 270 for hunting, and then another person was asking about getting cats inspected by GFP, whether it be for trapping and hunting.
Okay, perfect. Oh, there I see him. All right, am I back on there? There I can see. I couldn't see myself before. Okay. So bobcats 5 days to check in. It doesn't matter, trap, shot. It's just harvest. We've been checking in quite a few. I've checked in a bunch this last week. Just within 5 days, you can just call any of us and we'll get it checked in. A lot of times the taxidermists will actually take the jaw, cut it out so you don't got to mess with it, and they'll give it to us and we'll give them the CITES tag, and it's a pretty simple process. So so bobcats, seen a lot of those lately, but see, what was the other? So was there one more I'm missing here? One more question.
Answer the 270.
Oh, the 270. Gotcha.
Oh yeah. There it is.
I lost my video. So 270 would be legal, correct? So with the night vision thermal, it says 0.312. So I don't know too many over in the odd over threes, but any of the 30 caliber, 308, anything below would be good to go. Except for you can't use a 50 cal, I guess, but everything else is good. Anything below 0.312. So good questions. Put some more in there if there's something I'm missing, but coyotes is pretty simple. We allow quite a bit of stuff. But it gets a little different with thermal night vision. It gets a little more complicated. I think I covered most of that. The gist of it is on private land, you just need permission and use, 30 caliber or below in your you're good to go. It's changed a lot in the last few years. It used to be more complicated, landowner with you, landowner permission, written permission. Now you just need permission like anything else. So, all right, Taylor, you got anything you thought of yet, or that I missed? I'm making her unmute her.
Nope, you covered it all.
All right. Well, very cool. Well, yeah, let the
Awesome.
trappers get back to their business, and then I'll just keep monitoring if anything else pops up. But luckily for predator and stuff, it's pretty light on rules. Thermal, night vision, a little bit more complicated, but it's getting better by the year. So I'm sure I'll think of something else, but I'll put it in the chat. So thank you very much.